Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Jorgens from Endeavour Solutions and GP Support North. Today, we're here to talk about automation of budgets and financial planning and analysis with Vena Solutions. We have a number of people on the line. I see we have clients that are running Dynamics GP, Dynamics Nav, and Business Central. So we're all represented here and very excited to be talking today about automation and workflow and ease of use and really helping transform your organizations. Agenda, I'm going to do some quick introductions and hand it over to TJ. He's going to do some additional introductions, and then we have Neil on the line who will be presenting more about Vena and giving a proper showcase and a deeper dive. Following today's discussion, I'll go over pricing overview, and that will be excluded from the recordings just for confidentiality, but you can always reach out to Endeavour GP Support North, talk to us later about what would be right for you, for those that are watching the recording today. So why does Endeavour like Vena? Why do our clients love it? There's four things. First of all is really our consultants have written some really great white papers around business transformation. Business transformation while staying on Dynamics GP, or business transformation with Business Central, moving from GP to Business Central, or from Nav to Business Central, or from other systems straight into Business Central. Business transformation is doing better processes, creating the analytics, embedding analytics throughout your organization, and creating that culture around making more informed decisions based on trends, based on analytics, based on data. And Vena is a great way to complement your systems with a cloud-based platform that can be hosted in Canada only or hosted in the USA only, keeping your data safe and providing a number of processes, not only budgeting, but also the dashboards, the analytics, the ease of use. Looking at number 2 here, we used to try to get all the clients get rid of your Excel sheets. Excel sheets are inefficient. Everything needs to be in your system, and we hate Excel. Really come full circle. We love Excel. No one wanted to give up their Excel sheets, so it's embracing Excel. It's used as a front end, and there's, it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg. 3/4 of the power is still behind the scenes within the Vena Data Mart up in the cloud. The workflow and automation components that we're going to show you today, and how it connects all the pieces together. Obviously, is the efficiencies, increasing your financial close. One of the secrets to that is if you can get your financial close from 10 days, 7 days, something like that, down to 3 days, that saves 4 extra days that you can do analysis, that you can run forecasting, get into FP&A, maybe moving from an annual budget to something that's quarterly or even monthly in scenarios and scenario planning. Fourth point that I'm just going to show here, not fairly clear, integration with Microsoft ERP applications. We have a ton of clients on Dynamics GP that are using, working with Vena. It connects with Dynamics Nav and Business Central. Business Central, there's a new connector that Vena has to further accelerate, reduce the time, and get all the components in, and anything that is really available. You can get down to transactional data. We can be looking at financial data is obviously the easier component, but a variety of other consolidated systems. Really, it's your data mart up on the cloud and pushing that through to all of your components. So with that in mind, let me transition this over to TJ. Give yourself a quick introduction, and we can take stuff from there.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Scott. Hi, everyone, and thanks again for joining us today. Quick intro from myself. My name is TJ, and I'm on the partner team here at Vena. I work very closely with Scott and the Endeavour team in providing that best level of service for our mutual clients, really to support your business growth. So I'm going to take a couple minutes now just to run through some slides to really set the stage before we dive into the actual Vena platform with Neil. So looking at this one, how Vena connects the dots. Right now, as you can imagine, a lot of companies are really running into challenges when it comes to their budgeting cycle. A lot of those existing processes can be very manual, very time consuming. That includes having disparate systems that really don't talk to one another, heavy IT involvement, trouble consolidating data between different departments across your company, and an over-reliance sometimes on reporting solutions that lack those BI capabilities when you really need to proactively plan ahead for the future when you're thinking of your budgets, your forecasts. So where Vena really comes into play is to help bridge that gap. Vena is the only native Excel-based FP&A platform that's really purpose-built for Microsoft, really pairing the best parts of Excel and the power of a full finance-led planning solution so teams can really stick with an environment that they're familiar with, but really wrapped in that level of security, wrapped in that level of control that's going to give them that best of both worlds. So really working to help simplify that business planning, maximizing your time so you can make more confident and better strategic decisions a lot quicker than you've previously done as well. And now looking at this slide here, you can see the true value of Vena in that it really does connect the people, the departments, the processes, and the systems all through the power of a single platform in the middle. So with this, we easily connect to all critical source systems, whether it's your ERP, your HRIS system, your CRM, or even all of the above, and really empowering you to make those key financial decisions across the entire organizational level. Really removing that time that you're spending collecting and consolidating data between different departments, since everything is now housed in Vena as that single source of truth for your business. And you'll be able to see how all of this comes together when Neil takes us through the demonstration in a couple minutes. Just moving on to the next slide, you'll see that we've really built that complete planning platform for finance teams and business leaders to really help power and support your business growth. Users are able to really grow into the platform at scale. For instance, if your team is using Vena for your budgeting and your forecasting right now, and in a few months down the line, you envision using Vena for your financial close processes or your workforce planning, that can be done fairly seamlessly as well. And on the left there, you can see at the core of that solution is what we call a growth engine. This is really driven by collaboration and analysis. So that means any Excel-based process that is highly collaborative and repeatable can be done within Vena as well. So thinking of those amazing Excel models that you guys have built out over years and years, and that you spend a lot of time creating, that can actually be brought into Vena as well. And on top of that, we do look to ensure that there's a certain level of data integrity, additional workflows for different teams to collaborate, integrations, and enhance security all the way down to the cell level. Again, we'll be showing this during the demonstration as well. And then did want to note that we do offer best practices with some of our pre-configured solutions. So these are actually tailored to specific industries or use cases. For instance, things like budgeting solutions specifically created for manufacturing companies, just being one of them. And then just moving on to the final slide there. This is really highlighting, the fact that Vena has collaborated with Microsoft on a strategic level for over a decade now, really to empower the Office of Finance. Vena really strategically integrates across Microsoft's leading technology stack, as you can see listed there, whether it's from our native Excel interface, our embedded Power BI solution, all the way to the Microsoft 365 functionality, and a whole bunch more on the way as well. So with that being said, I will pass it over to Neil, who'll get into the actual demo and show Vena in action.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, TJ. Neil, I'm going to make you presenter. There you go. I just hit yes.
Okay, let me make sure I get the right screen sharing here.
Yep, I see your PowerPoint.
See my PowerPoint. Perfect. Okay, welcome everybody. Quick introduction. My name is Neil McDonald. I'm a solution consultant here at Vena. I've been with the company for about 8 months now. Prior to that, I was in the Microsoft space. I've known Scott and the Endeavour team for a number of years. Worked in GP, worked in Business Central, worked in D365 Finance. And I wished I'd had a tool like Vena back in the days when I was doing budgeting. So when I saw the tool, I thought, you know what, this is a company I kind of like to have a chance to work for. So let me walk you through. Looking at my screen right now, you can see what we're going to go through from a demo perspective. Going to look at some basic budgeting tasks. Going to start very simple with some maybe some OpEx planning. Look at some workforce planning, and then talk about how does all of this happen? What's going on behind the scenes at Vena? So that whole workflow and monitoring and making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it. Look at some financial statements. Look at some interactive dashboards. TJ and Scott both mentioned the relationship that Vena has with Microsoft. To show you how we can drill into some of the Microsoft information as well, some of that AI machine learning, and being able to use that to analyze your data. So let me just quickly change screens here. As you can see, I'm at a browser, right? Vena is a cloud-based solution. I can access it through any browser. I happen to be using Chrome. If you like Macs and you want Safari, that's fine. If you like Edge, doesn't matter as long as you have a browser you can get in. We're going to log in as a user, and you'll notice when we first come in. Yes.
Let's take off our cameras just to make this a little bit bigger for the audience.
Okay.
Good view.
How's that?
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so what we're looking at again, I've logged in as a user. We can see in the upper right corner, I'm logged in as a gentleman by the name of Frank Jones. We scroll across to the left, we can see that Frank is what we call a contributor. He's contributing to the budget. So he's doing some work on the budget. He's going to enter in the budget, submit that up for approval. So we call him a contributor. Every user, when they log into Vena, has their own dashboard, their own workspace, and we can see the tasks that Frank needs to work on. We've got some color-coded ones here. In red, it's past due. Frank can very quickly look and say, hey, you know, I've missed my deadline in this, and I've got to get working on it. He's got some tasks he's currently working on, some stuff that's coming up, and then some reports to work on. Any task, if we click on it, a drawer slides open from the side, and we can see the who, the what, the why of this particular task. So this is the expense planning. We can see it's part of the 2024 annual plan, and we can see that there's a bunch of people that are assigned to work on this with Frank. So Frank's there. And as he's collaborating with his co-workers, with Gia, with Yashvi, with Jane, and so on, he can come in and leave messages. They can leave messages back and forth. They can attach files here if they need to. There's no need to have side files off there somewhere on somebody's desktop. Everything can be right here stored in Vena, and they can collaborate with one another. There's an area for instructions. So people don't necessarily work on their budget every day of the year. So they may come back to this in a month or two, and they kind of forgot what they were working on and how to do it. Very easily put instructions, some supporting documents in here so they don't have to go back to finance every time, but they're ready to go. We go back to the main screen. We can also see a couple templates that they're working on. As we launch one of these templates, you'll notice it's simply going to open up in Excel. Vena supports any version of Excel from 2012 forward. I happen to be using the latest version of Excel 365. Notice a couple things here. It's just a blank template. This is not a file that you send to Frank, that Frank has to fill out, that you have to send, that he has to send back to you. And there's not one for every department where somebody at the end of the day has to combine these and kind of consolidate them. We don't have to worry about, did somebody break a link? Did somebody add a column, add a row? I'm now going to have to worry about that when I put it together. We're just starting with an Excel template. Notice that Frank is limited to working in New York, so there's security here. Frank can't see other areas that we don't want him working on. Using the security in Vena, we can restrict what he has access to. But we can then also allow him to choose other areas to work on. For example, in the departments, we can have sales, we have services, marketing, and so on. Frank's going to use this template to do the sales budget. When he's finished, he's simply going to save that data to Vena, and using the exact same template, he can work on services. The same template, work on marketing, and so on. Let's leave it set. Let's leave it set to the sales department. Frank can also choose to work on different time periods as well. So right now we're working on the 2024 budget. He can go look in the past. He can start working on the future if he's a little keen, and we can look at different scenarios. So right now he's working on the budget, but he might want to look at a forecast. He might want to do some what if planning down the road. Let's leave it set here. When we apply the selection, Excel is now asking Vena for the data that corresponds to what Frank selected. And as you can see now, the template has populated. It's no longer just a blank sheet, but it is dynamically populated. And by dynamically, I mean it's looking at the chart of accounts. It's going back into your Dynamics GP, going into your nav, going into your Business Central, and it's bringing in the chart of accounts. If somebody were to go into the ERP and add a new account, for example, a 6250 account, you don't have to go around and update all the spreadsheets. You don't have to go to everybody's desk and make sure that everybody's got this account added, because it is dynamic, because Vena talks to the ERP. If Frank is allowed to see 6250, it will automatically show up in the template in the right location with the correct data there. We're also dynamically bringing in different time periods. Notice we have actuals all the way through to October. My demo database assumes I'm currently working in November, so I've got some forecasting that I can do in here for November, December, but it's locked as of October. That period has now closed. So Frank can't change that information. As we go forward, if it rolls forward into the next month, November would lock, and December would be a month that could be worked on. And then we can see we have the budget here in January going forward. There's some color coding on here. Don't worry about the colors. If you don't like the colors we've got, they can be customized. It's just Excel, right? Just formatting in Excel. Green happens to be the Vena color. What we have done, though, is made it easy for Frank to know where to work. These blue cells is where Frank is going to enter his budget. Notice the white cells, there's other numbers coming in that Frank can work on in his budget. If we expand this section here, we can see a lot of these numbers are driven by formulas. For example, we can have a number that's spread evenly throughout the year. Maybe it's based on weekdays. Maybe there's seasonal trends. So depending on your business, certain businesses ramp up, for example, just before Christmas, shopping, for example, picks up. Maybe you're in a winter-based business, you pick up in the winter, you slow down in the summer, and so on. So you can set up seasonal trends. You might have cost per employee. You might have things based on revenue per head count, based on the number of units sold, based on the prior year, based on other types of regression. These are simply formulas that can be built into the template to fit the way that your business runs. We can have numbers coming in from other tabs. For example, the travel tab and the vendor tab. We'll look at those in a moment. And we can also have some numbers that are fed top down. Most budgeting is done like that, where there's some numbers that are fed down. Overhead, for example. Frank knows that his department is responsible for a share of the rent. We don't want him changing that. We've got that locked down, but it's part of his budget. He needs to see it. Let's go back up to these blue cells where Frank is going to enter his budget. Remember, we're in Excel. I don't know of too many finance people that don't know at least a little bit about Excel, and that's what makes Vena such a great tool for finance people. I'm simply going to type in a number. Just like I would do in any other Excel spreadsheet, I can drag and drop. You can't see me doing it, but I'm hitting Control-C, Control-V on my keyboard. The same things that you do in Excel today, you continue to do in Vena because it's an Excel-based tool. But we take it a step further. Suppose that Frank, while he's working on his budget, is thinking, I got to fill in this advertising number for January, but wonder what happened last year. Frank doesn't have to log into GP or Business Central or NAV. He doesn't have to call finance. Frank can very easily go back and say, there's the actual number from last year. By using the Vena connector, this is what allows Vena and Excel to talk to each other. Frank can come over to the inspection area and he can actually drill into the transactions. Vena is now going back to the ERP and asking for the exact transactions that made up that number. Frank can see the dates. He can see who the vendors were. He can see the dollar amounts showing up here. So now he can do some analysis on this information. He can make some smart decisions and start putting in those numbers from his budget. And we can do this on any of the cells, any of the areas that are available to Vena. So Frank's working away. He's looking at this. Maybe he wants to do a little bit more calculation. He wants to add a little more detail. He can add a scratch pad. Very easily to do this. There's also an insert scratch pad button here in the connector as well. Frank can build out the same thing you would do in Excel today, your quantity, your cost, your totals. Very simple to build out in Excel. Come back in and say, I want that cell to pull the number from the scratch pad. Very simple to do. It's standard Excel. Frank may want a little bit more information, but he doesn't want to have to go and create an entire scratch pad. He just needs maybe a couple little pieces of explanation here. A couple of things he can do is come over to the data input tools and he can insert a couple lines. So as he adds lines, notice we can now type in here. So we know he's got some information regarding project A, regarding vendor 1, and the same as he did just a moment ago, just simply start typing in numbers, copy, paste, drag, drop, the same as we did momentarily ago, and we're working in Excel. So Frank is able to build out more information. If he needs to go even further than that, let's look at the travel tab. We can build out another matrix where Frank can say, I've got certain people that are going on trips this year. I know where they're starting from. I know where they're going, how many nights, the number, what the costs are going to be. He can add all of that in. And then he can also tell Vena how to spread those across his budget. For example, I've got one here that's spread evenly. We can see that quite clearly there. I've got one hitting Q1, Q3, Q4, various months of the year. And then these numbers are what are coming back in and tying back into that travel tab, or the travel line, sorry, which is, if we expand this out, we can see there's the travel line and there's the numbers coming in. That's coming from that travel tab. We could take it a step further, give him a chance to add a little more detail, put some restrictions in place, however. For example, for the consulting fees, he can pick certain vendors that he's able to do business with. So you can lock this down by vendor so that Frank is restricted in what he can add, but he's got the ability to add more detail as he's going forward. So Frank's working on his budget. As he's working away, he's going to save this data to Vena. And now what we're doing is taking the data that's here, and instead of storing it in Excel, we never store the data in Excel, we're saving it to Vena, so Frank can very easily pull that back again. A couple of kind of guardrails that we built in the system as well, and you can build these into your templates. We have what we call a hard or a soft validation. For example, Frank puts a number in that looks a little funny, and he doesn't really realize it. Notice now this cell has turned orange. We get the orange X. There's a rule that says, Frank, you can't exceed year over year by more than 20%. When Frank tries to save this to Vena, he gets a warning. This is a soft validation. He could still save it if he wanted to. But what if Frank really fat-fingered something, and instead of 75,000, he put 750,000? He's now exceeded his budget when he tries to save it to Vena. Sorry, I guess I have to go one extra digit there. We'll make this number really high. And now he's exceeded his budget. He's broken it. When he tries to save, there is no option to save it. This is a hard validation. So you can set rules as to how your budgets are going to be built, what rules you want your people to follow, and they are forced to follow those if you want that validation there. Frank has saved his budget. We're simply going to close this out. And now let's take a quick look at the workforce planning. Frank wants to look at the people that he's working with. You know, what are the impacts of the budgets and the salaries and the raises and so on that are coming from the people. Notice we have, again, a blank template. He's going to pick the sales department, the budget, apply the selection. Now, instead of pulling in strictly financial data, we could be talking to the HRIS system, whatever that happens to be. And now notice we're pulling in employee information. We've got employee IDs. We could have names in there as well. We have, you know, what type of employee are they? Are they salaried or are they hourly? When did they start? When did they leave the organization? We can put that information as well. Frank might be looking at, you know, everybody's going to get a 4% raise this year, but he's got a couple really keen people on his team. He wants to reward them a little differently, and he can put in when he wants that to happen. So all of the information he needs to plan his budget, all the way out through to things like, if you're in the US, FUTA, SUTA, 401k matches, the life insurance and so on. In Canada, CPP, EI, the RRSP matching. So we can customize these templates to whatever your localization is, but all of that information is now fed in. Frank knows he's going to hire more people in the year. This is what the HRIS knows about, but it doesn't know that Frank's looking at hiring more people. So in the new area here, we can have the ability, same as we had before, to input and insert rows where Frank can say, you know, I've got some requests that are approved, and I know I'm only allowed to hire a certain type of people. The system will validate, does this make sense? If it does, it will insert a row where Frank can then go and start putting more information in. All of that feeds back in. Now we have financial data. We have the financial information required for him to build out his budget, but we're also pulling in the head count so we can do things like FTEs, revenue per FTE, and so on as we're going through. And then all of that pulls back into this template. When Frank is done, he's simply going to save the data. I won't bother doing that here. And he's now finished. He is going to submit this. Where does it go? It now says it's in review. Frank can't change it. He can see it, but it's gone to the next step. Let me change views just for a moment here. And now notice I have some additional roles here. So in Vena, we have 3 different user types. Frank was a contributor. He's contributing or entering information into his budget. We also have a manager role, which includes 3 things. It could be the manager of the process. It could be the modeler. That's the person that would look after the integration between Vena and Dynamics GP, between Vena and Business Central, and so on. And then the admin is the person who looks after who's allowed into Vena. When they're in Vena, what are they allowed to see? What areas do we want them in? Which areas do we want them restricted? Right now, let's look at the manager role, and we're looking at a workflow. This is how Vena controls who's doing what. Are they on time? What are they supposed to do next? This is where all of that time allocation comes from. We have a start point. We have an end point. This is just drag and drop, so you can make it look as nice as you want. A simple right click, I can add new steps, an input step. That was Frank. He was inputting information into his budget. The review step is the next one in line, and so on and so on. If we go into the expense planning, we can see this is where Frank was working, right, on the New York budget. When he submitted it, it goes to the next step, the review. From here, it's either going to be approved, move to the next step, or it's going to be rejected and go back to Frank. But this is not just a pretty picture. This is the way that Vena forces it to work. You can't go from one step to the next until everything is properly approved if you build your workflow right. Now, as part of this, I am actually the approver. So if I go into my workflow now, notice I have the expense review. This is what Frank just submitted to me. I now, as part of my workflow, would launch this, and I can either reject it or I can approve it and have it go to the next step as well. So that is how Vena manages what's happening in the process. You as the manager, though, might want to know, where are your people working? What are they actually doing? I can get into the status tracker and I can see there's my entire 24 plan. I've got 46% of the tasks have been started. I've got 15 approved. I've got 8 under review, 31 in progress. I can see there's no one task that's overdue. I get a calendar view and I can see below each of the tasks. I can see who's working on them. There's that task that Frank just submitted, and now it's gone in for review. So Vena is enforcing this. So as a manager, I can see where my people are. I don't have to email them. I don't have to phone them. I can see exactly what's happening, where everybody's working as things are going through the process using that workflow. In addition to that, I can also put time limits on these tasks. So if I go into the task, for example, I can assign who's working on it. There's the instructions, supporting documents. I can also have people informed when I want this to be done. I can pick a calendar date, or I could say, I want this to be completed 15 days after the task starts. And Vena will automatically send out emails saying you have a task coming due in 15 days, in 10 days, in 5 days, and so on, at whatever cadence you want. It will automatically inform your people so everybody knows what they're working on, when they're supposed to be doing it. And as the manager, I have oversight of the entire process. Now, let's go back into Frank's world for a minute. Frank's still waiting for me to approve this. In the meantime, Frank might want to look at some of the reporting. So let's go in. We can do a couple different things here. We have some PowerPoints. So Frank might want to put together a package to go to the board. So let's look at this. We can look at it. We can download it. We can do a PowerPoint online. We can do a PDF. The same selections we had before. So we're going to look at Frank's New York 2023 budget. We are going to go to PowerPoint online. Vena is now compiling this information, embedding it into a pre-built PowerPoint template, and we can see it's pulling in the information we're looking for, giving us some information regarding this budget. I now have a nice deck that I've got graphs, I've got charts, I've got the commentary that I can now present to the board very quickly, very easily to get that information to them. But I might want to do something that's not in a PowerPoint deck. So let's go into the reports, the operational reports here. Notice that these are Excel templates. I'm going to come into the financial reports, financial statements. And a lot of our customers start with budgeting. Then they realize how easy it is for Vena to also build their financial statements because the data is live. As fast as I can save the data, for example, in Business Central and GP, I can have that replicated and updated in Vena. As soon as someone submits their budget, it's updated in Vena right away. Notice I've turned security off here. So Frank was limited to just New York, but notice I have multiple entities, multiple companies within this environment as well. I don't have to log in multiple times to look at different parts of my organization. I can do everything in one spot. I've also got multiple departments. This is interesting as well. We can have different roll-ups. So you can look at your company in multiple ways. For example, Frank was looking at the sales department, then he could go and work on services and so on. But what if I want to slice and dice my data a little differently? For example, I want to look at my revenue. Well, sales and services feeds into revenue. I could also have marketing, accounting and finance, and admin feed up into support. So I can look at different ways or different slices of my data, different slices of my company, and view it in different manners. I've got my years the same as I had before. My budgets, multiple currencies. If you're working across the border, different currencies are available in Vena as well. When I apply the selection, Vena is now building out my financial statements. So I can see I've got my income statement. I have my balance sheet. I have my cash flow statement. And I can go back and look at the prior year as well. I only happen to have 1 year here. If you want 2, 3, 4 years, that can be very easily built in a Vena template as well. And then the variance report. And this is where you start to get some insight into your data. For example, Frank was working on the budgets. Remember, he was looking at January of the actuals where he drilled in. And he was working on his budget. Notice I can look at different scenarios, looking at 2024, and he entered some information into that January area. When I refresh the data, Vena will now update all the numbers to bring back what corresponds to my request here. Notice if I scroll down and look at the advertising, everybody in my company has submitted their budget. Let's say I'm the manager and I'm thinking, like, where did they come up with this $121,000? Like, where did this come from? Coming back over to the data inspection area, I can drill down and I can see that this came from everybody's budget. If you notice, I've got different locations, different areas. For example, I've got Chicago sales, I've got Amsterdam's accounting, I've got Los Angeles services, but I can see everybody's budget. I can see the numbers that they've entered. Remember that number that Frank saved just a few minutes ago, that 20,500? There it is. Frank literally saved that just moments ago. Now, Frank knows that. Frank knows what he was thinking, but as his manager, I might be looking at this going, you know, his number is a lot higher than anybody else's. What was Frank thinking? How did he come up with that number? I can come over and drill saves. It will now actually tell me that this number, 20,500, was saved today at 13:20. I happen to be in the Atlantic time zone, so that's about 10 or 11 minutes ago my time, and it was done by Frank. I can download the details. It's now taking me back to the exact template that Frank was working on. I can see there's Frank's number. I can see it goes back to the scratch pad. There it is. I can see exactly what Frank was thinking. I can even come in and say, look, I know that Frank was doing some analysis on this. He drilled into these numbers and was analyzing the numbers when he made his budget. So I can see exactly what he was thinking. I don't have to phone him. I don't have to bother him. I don't have to send emails back and forth. Everything is in one spot right at my fingertips. Very easy to see where that came from. Now, we mentioned at the outset the relationship that we have with Microsoft. It allows us to take advantage of a lot of the machine learning, the AI that Microsoft is building into their software today. For example, when I'm looking at this table, you know, I can slice and dice this. I can sort it. I can do some manipulation, but watch how easy it is to let Microsoft, let Excel do the work for me. I'm going to come up here and analyze the data. Simple click of a button, and it's now gone and said, hey, did you happen to notice that New York has a noticeably higher value? I can insert a pivot chart. I don't have to learn new technology. I don't have to learn new ways of programming. It's Excel, right? And I really only clicked a couple buttons, but I also know how to use pivot tables a little bit. So I can come in and say, you know, I can see it's New York, but, you know, which department is it that's causing the issue? Now I can break down the data and look at it in different ways. And here at Vena, and I know that the folks at Endeavour are the same, this is where they want you, their customers, spending your time, right? You have a lot of really smart people running around collecting data. Why not let Vena collect the data for you and let your people spend time analyzing the data, making smart decisions? You know, should we open a new department? Do we have to hire more people? Do we lay people off? Being able to look at the data to make decisions on running the business instead of running around collecting numbers makes a lot of sense. Now, in addition to doing something like this, we might want to take it even a step further and look at what we call Vena Insights. So the Vena Insights, this is the relationship again we have with Microsoft that allows us to embed Power BI in Vena. I'm not going outside of Vena, right? I'm still inside Vena. I'm still logged in as Frank, but now using that Microsoft AI ecosystem, we've embedded it in Vena where I can now make some smart decisions on my business. For example, let's look at an executive summary. Remember the options we had in Vena itself? I've got the same things here. So I can look at different parts of my organization, by entity, by department. I can look at the different scenarios as well. So actuals, budgets, forecasts, and so on. So let's compare the forecast with the actuals. And I can do this based on different time periods and so on. But when I look at that, I can see my KPIs. I can see graphical information, my top 5 OPEX accounts. This chart is kind of cool, the decomposition chart, where I can come in and I look at different parts of an organization. As I click on this, on any one of these, it will rebuild and show me exactly what's going on. For example, it's saying my base scenario, my forecast is 7.3 million. My actuals that I'm comparing it to are only 6 million. I can drill it and I can very quickly get some insights. As I'm looking at any one of these parts of my business, I can even come in here and I can drill through and I can actually see the data. It will take it right back to the transactions that gave me that information so I can see exactly what's going on. So this is obviously going to give me year to date. If I want to look at it period by period, I can see that same information here as well, and it's giving me some insights as to what's going on with that data. The heat map allows me to go in and see more information based on the area. For example, this one is saying I get a 41 million forecast. The base scenario, that forecast trended down. It tells me when, it tells me why. I can even see a little more detail on it. If I want to, I can right click, I can drill down and go a little further, and now it'll take it right down step by step. I can start to look at different parts of my organization. Might want to look at the revenue side where I can see again that decomposition chart. I've got the graph, but some people like numbers. I want to have some numbers as part of this as well so I can see the numbers. As I click on any one of these numbers, notice everything else changes. It's showing me now when I click on Montreal, it goes to Canada. Then it filters that down to Montreal down below where we can see it. And we can see the numbers. And I click on any one of these, everything updates. These are live. These are talking to your actual ERP, bringing you live views of your data that you can work with right off the bat. Profitability, things like the EBIT waterfall. Again, I can highlight one of these and it shows me, for example, my general operating expenses consist of advertising, meals, promotions, and so on. So I'm starting to get some insight into my data and being able to see what's going on. Look at my OPEX. So now some of this machine learning, the smart AI that Microsoft has built in can now analyze the data. For example, what's causing OPEX to increase? It's showing there's something going on in the sales department. If I highlight this or just hover over it, it gives me a little bit of information. If I click on it, it breaks it down even further. Yes, sales actually is trending much higher than everybody else. If I come up here to my tree graph, I can see what's making up the sales. I've got salaries and wages, telecom, legal fees, advertising, and so on. Simple click of this, I can now break down that's even further. Notice my telecom and subscriptions is very, very high. If I right click, I can drill through, I can see the data, and I can go right into the actual transactions. I can see exactly what's causing that to happen. The predictive analytics, this part's really cool. Microsoft's machine learning can look at the data and say, this is what I know has happened, right? We know what's happened in the past. And it gets to a point where it says, based on what I know, what might happen going forward. It starts to predict upper and lower boundaries based on what's happened in the past. We can also tell the system that within a certain threshold, everything is okay. Anything outside of the gray, for example, we say, I might want to examine that a little bit further. So I can see there's an anomaly here, simple click of a button, and I can see, the base scenario was unexpectedly low at that particular time. And notice it's telling me that the issue is with sales. So between this chart and the one we were just looking at, I've come to the conclusion there's something going on in the sales department, in particular telecom. I'm now using the data to make insights into my business, being able to really make smart decisions about running my business very, very easily. And then, of course, we have the smart narrative as well that gives us more detail, again, some anomaly detection, and it's building out some narratives here telling me, what might have caused that to happen. The base scenario trended up, resulting in an increase between certain time periods. So this is all, again, embedded in Vena using Microsoft's AI ecosystem to give us the ability to analyze the data in ways that perhaps you've never even thought of analyzing it before. Let's go back into Frank's world for a minute. A couple other quick things to look at here. What if Frank wants to do some what-if modeling? For example, we could come in and look at some scenario planning, some what-if modeling by account. The scenario planning one is kind of cool. There's different ways that we can slice and dice the data. Frank might want to look at his business in various ways. So let's compare multiple scenarios. Let's start with the budget, and we're going to compare the New York 2023 budget with a couple different scenarios here. We have a what if A and a what if B. We'll apply the selection. And now those numbers will come in and we can see that everything's starting to build out here. We have our budget. Our what if A is just a little bit higher, what if B is quite a bit higher. And we can say, what are the differences? So the budget, this one versus the budget or versus the target, we can see up or down. We've got the ability to look at, what if there's a change in the FX rate? The FX rate right now is turned off. Let's turn it back on. Right now we're saying the budget, everything is even, but we know that that's probably not true. What if the FX rate is 1.1? We can see a change in the gross margin. If I move this over a little bit, what if the FX rate jumps up? We hope it doesn't, to 1.5. All of a sudden now we see again a change in the margin. Everything is starting to update and refresh on the fly as we're building. We might want to look at inflation. No, is it 5%? Is it 8%? And as we're making changes, everything will update. If you're in a SaaS type business, you're looking at your MRR, your monthly recurring revenue by customer. What if it's the budget is set at 72? What if that happens to drop to 50? We can see it's changing. Our gross margin change. We can see things changing down below. What if it jumps to 120? What if there's a change in our cost, customer growth, and so on? We can take this all the way down to right to the general ledger level, where we might say, for example, what if there is a change that is going to affect the legal fees? So right now we've got 399. We might want to protect the business a little bit. Maybe we can get that down to 200,000. Not a problem. Well, sorry, I got 2 million. Let's take a zero off of there. What happens if things go wrong and it has to jump up to 500,000? So we can very easily start to manipulate the data to see what's going on. And then if we go to the variance tab, we can see number by number exactly what's changed, what's trending up, what's trending down. Going in a little bit further, we can say, for example, this is up 9%, driven by foreign exchange and product sales growth. This one is trending, going up 32%. Our costs are going up because, again, foreign exchange by head count. So the ability to slice and dice and analyze the numbers becomes very easy because we're letting Vena's engine pull that information in, analyze the numbers for us, and simply using a very familiar Excel interface, being able to work with that data. So these are just some of the areas where Vena is working for Frank. We have, for example, we can do some revenue planning as well. We've got subscription planning. We've got some long-range planning. So perhaps a lot of our customers have asked for this. I don't want to just do monthly planning for the next year. I want to go even further than that. So we can go in, for example, looking at the revenue and the cost of goods, the salary and the wages. And we might want to look at, the short term, we want to look at it monthly. Then we want to go further out. So for example, here I have the full year for 2024. I'm looking at it monthly. I might want the next year to be quarterly, and then from there on the full year. So there's not a one size fits all with Vena because we're working with that very familiar Excel interface that most finance people are used to working with. We can design these templates to work however you need to work for your business and model out just about anything. Like I say, we've got some revenue planning. We've got what-if modeling. We've got a lot of reports, currency management, financial close, eliminations, consolidations. I know from my days in GP, the intercompany do-tos and do-froms work great. But at the end of the month, you have to do the eliminations, and sometimes that can be very time-intensive. Vena can help with that as well. So I hope everybody's enjoyed their overview of Vena today. I'm just going to check very quickly and see if there are any questions. Scott, I can't see the chat. Maybe you can tell me if there's any questions available or required there.
Nothing right now. We can open it up as well at the end.
Okay, cool. So for Scott, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, turn it back over to you. And that's already done.
There we go. I took it back. That was amazing, Neil. Thank you so much. Your eloquency of explaining this is absolutely fantastic, and obviously pulling in with your experience within the Microsoft Dynamics realms really helped out. Not only is it the ease of use in using Excel, but Vena also makes Excel just look that much nicer. Like those graphs and those analytical reports and all the automated easy stuff just looks beautiful and so much better than some of the those that are used to, say, management reporter, where yeah, we got rows and columns, but it doesn't have that pretty appeal that helps tell a better story. So now we're going to talk about pricing. Those that are watching the recording webinar, please reach out to Endeavour, and we'll be here to help you and talk more about pricing for Vena. For those that are on the line, thank you very much. So looking at some samples, there's the core system, and then per user fees for the types of users. There's a professional package and complete package. Essentially, the complete package provides a discount by bundling in a larger number of users, as well as some of their premium support and support desk through Vena. If we look at just the professional, get this up and running, Typically, mid-sized organization will have 1 to 2 administrators. Often 1 is fine. 3 to 5 contributors, which is the people that are building the scenarios, your core finance budgeting people, and then out into broader view-only type data. Those are also individuals that are submitting budgets, approving budgets, and looking at other components. Your executive team is most likely view-only, looking at those dashboards and scenarios that are built for them. We look at implementing your financial model, core financials, budgeting workflow. As Neil and TJ mentioned, Vena can be very stretchy and used across a number of areas within your organization, a number of different departments and use cases, and just very easy to either show you how to create these new scenarios, new templates, new reports, or it can have those created for you. If we look at the implementation, you're in the $30,000 range, and there is a nonprofit pricing available, as well as some special, sort of end of quarter discounts and some discounts for SMB. If you are a small organization in the 10 million in sales, I know there are some discounts that may be available. So hopefully this provides some context. As you can see, going all the way back to the beginning, Vena is being recognized by Gartner. That's typically an enterprise play. It's a very stretchy tool. Within Endeavour, we're focusing on the SMB and mid-market. So pricing is obviously something that is important, and make sure that this is able to help you justify the cost versus the value. And obviously this is a lot cheaper than a headcount or even half a headcount. And imagine the impact you can be making on your organization. So next, for those that are new to Endeavour, thank you very much for attending today. I have 3 lines of business: advisory services, implementation, and upgrades, and then ongoing support. Our core values are integrity, trust, and accountability. And we actually have 3 major banners: the Endeavour Solutions, focusing on Business Central and Cloud; GP Support North, focusing on all those clients on Dynamics GP; and our new team, Purely CRM, which is our Dynamics 365 and Power Apps CRM consultants. And that's come across through growth as well as a recent merger and acquisition that we had. So our 3 brands, and we're now up to 80 people, close to 100 if you include a few extra individuals that aren't on full-time payroll. 850 active clients, thousands of upgrades and implementations, and all the certifications you would expect from a leader such as Endeavour. For those that do have additional questions, either reply back to today's webinar invite, and those that are watching the recording, visit us online, www.endeavorsolutions.ca. In the Contact Us, as well as in the footer, you'll find contact details for Steve, our Vice President, as equally as capable James McInnes, Senior Client Executive, as well as our Client Success Manager, Trish, who is working with probably everyone that's on the line, and is a great resource to help out with existing clients. So with that said, thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.